Professor Roubini, you've talked about the need for an immediate and massive cut in interest rates across the global economy. Do you think that's going to happen?
It's likely it's going to happen because at this point the liquidity provision has been provided by central banks. Literally yesterday, the Fed in the U.S. gave another $600 billion of cash dollars both to foreign central banks and to U.S. banks. That has not made any difference. This morning, LIBOR went from 2% to over 6%. So this crunch is there in the financial market. There is counterparty risk, and at this point, rather than printing money, you have to reduce the policy rates in the U.S., in the U.K., in the Eurozone, and across the world. We need a coordinated reduction in policy rates. It's not going to resolve every problem. It's going to signal that central banks are realizing this is a financial and economic disaster. Right now, this is not just a financial crisis. The U.S. is in a recession, but when you look at the latest data, the Eurozone is in a recession. The U.K. is in a recession. Canada is in a recession. Japan is in a recession. New Zealand is in a recession. All of the advanced economies, all of the G7 economies are now entering a recession. This is a financial crisis, is a banking crisis, and an economic crisis. And unless we realize that, we're going to soon enough even a global recession, because the recession in advanced economy is going to lead to a hard landing even in China, in Russia, in Brazil, in India, and other emerging markets in Asia, in Africa, and in Latin America. So we have to realize this is a very severe financial and economic crisis and start addressing it in a better way.
But the fact is, governments are stuck, aren't they? Because they're now facing huge deficits. They're probably going to have to raise taxes one way or another. They're probably going to have to cut public spending. That's going to have an impact on growth. We now seem to be in a global vicious circle, which is going to hurt ordinary people across the world.
Yeah, there's no painless route out of it. The remaining question, it seems to me, is whether there will be, as it were, a V-shaped recession, a quick and sharp, if deep recession, and then a resumption of economic activity, or whether it will be, and Professor Roubini referred to the experience of Japan in the 1990s, an L-shaped recession where the economy stagnates for a decade. The important point in avoiding the latter possibility is that governments and financial regulators recognize how broken the financial system is, do not allow banks to hold what Professor Roubini referred to as zombie loans on the books. They write down the bad assets and they get rid of the managements that have failed, such as happened in the case of Northern Rock.
Professor Roubini, before we finish, I want to have this thought from you. You have said recently that economic, financial, and geopolitical events suggest the decline of the American empire has started. Is this what the financial crisis is really all about?
Certainly one of the side effects of it is the decline of the American empire. Great empires tend to be net lenders running current account surpluses and being net creditors. The decline of the British Empire started when the UK became large budget deficits, current account deficits, became a net borrower and a net debtor country during World War II.
Well,
the same thing is happening right now in the United States.
Quite. On that basis, then, you seem to be saying that China, the oil-rich Arab Gulf states, maybe even Russia, they're the new economic superpowers because they're the creditors. They're the ones with the cash.
Certainly there is a dramatic shift in the balance of global economic, financial, trading, and even geopolitical power. The emergence of these other economic powers would have occurred regardless of China, India, and other emerging market economies, but the policy mistake done by the U.S., fiscal deficits, current account deficits, accumulation of public debt, of external debt, are now accelerating the relative fall in the power of the United States. The unipolar moment of the U.S. was going to last only a decade, but the weakness of the U.S. now is exacerbated by the most severe financial crisis since the Great Depression, by severe economic crisis, and therefore that relative decline of the U.S. is going to be faster than otherwise.
I don't agree with that. I think that there is a fundamental economic problem of huge imbalances in the global economy. The United States is running a huge current account deficit. There is a massive savings surplus in the emerging economies. But the United States' dominance in the international system rests on more than economics. It rests on the provision of as it were, global public goods, security, a reserve currency, the system of trade and
the reserve
payments.
currency you mentioned. Well, who's going to want dollars in the future? Given what we are discussing today, given the perspective of Professor Roubini, do you think the Chinese, the Russians, the Gulf states are going to want to buy more dollars?
I think that they will continue to sustain the U.S. imbalances, yes. I don't think that there is any feasible alternative. But my main point is that the United States is the provider of far more than the economic facts of life. It's the provider of global public goods that allow the world to continue as it is. And I don't think that will change despite the severity of the crisis.
Oliver Cam.
Yeah,
hang on, Oliver Cam. Sorry, Nouriel Roubini. We are unfortunately out of time. To you and Oliver Cam here in London, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.